Hi everyone. So I'll do a quick lecture. I don't know how long this will last. On Orwell's the first story by Orwell we're going to look at, called A Hanging. Now, when I say story, it's nonfiction, but we could treat it we can still apply literary analysis to it. It doesn't have to be a short story in order to read it in a literary fashion. It's a very short story. It's one of Orwell's earlier published pieces in 1931. So, like I said, biographically, Orwell served as a police officer in Burma, which was at the time part of the British Empire, and Burma is now Myanmar. And so he was a mid to low ranking police officer in the country, and eventually got really sick of it because of the things that he saw, some of the things that he was asked to do. It just did not agree with him. And like I said, Orwell, while being very patriotic, did not agree with the British Empire, and he disagreed with it because of firsthand knowledge. So this is an episode that we would have to assume he took place in, and the execution of a man in that country. So if we look at the opening couple of sentences, I think it's an interesting, if we to keep in mind this close reading technique that I want to instill. It was in Burma, a sodden morning of the rains. A sickly light, like yellow tinfoil, was slanting over the high walls into the jail yard. It's just a really, really nice opening image, because what does that opening image do? A sickly light, like yellow tinfoil, slanting over. So you see that this whole area is being illuminated by this sickly light. Okay, it's not healthy. I mean, we think of sunlight as something good, something vital. Here, the light is being described as sickly, like yellow tinfoil. Now, if we unpack this even further, tinfoil is what? It's cheap. If it's yellow, it has been used. So even the light in this place has this greasy, affected feeling. Okay. It stains the perception, because everything else in the story is illuminated by this. So it stains our perception moving forward of how we should understand the things that are happening in the story. Now, Orwell is not the first writer to discuss the impact that language has upon the human psyche. I mean, this is not his invention at all, but it's one of his primary foci in terms of what he does, or what he wants us to understand and take away from his writing. Now, what Orwell's doing in this story and in Shooting an Elephant, he's describing the way that bureaucracy works. Okay, there's a certain mechanism or machinery that bureaucracy requires in order to function. And in a bureaucracy, the idea is that you've partitioned all of the moving parts, right, of the bureaucracy itself. Everybody has a small role to play. I do this, you do that, and then that moves this thing forward. Okay, and then she does this, and he does that. The Bahamas loves bureaucracy. So does America and South Korea, where I used to live. The idea is this: in a strict bureaucracy, let's say you needed to get this form filled out. Okay, you needed to get an official version of Form X. So first of all, you need the form itself, right? So you go to this office over here, and they say, "Oh, you need Form X? Okay, well, do you have requisition slip Y?" You say, "Well, no, I didn't know I needed that." So, okay, well, you got to go over to this office to get requisition slip Y. So you go over to that office, you ask for requisition slip Y in order to get document X, and they say, "Oh no, you need the pink application slip." You say, "Well, where can I find that?" They say, oh, well, that's down the hall. And so basically you're just being run around, right, from little office to office to office to office. And that's kind of how bureaucracy functions, okay? And each person in this story has a small role to play. So the speaker, the main character, the I of the story, right? Basically his job is to walk the prisoner from point A to point B. That's it. So right before, point A to point execution. Some of the characters are either unaware of or uninterested in the things that are going on around them. They have this little role to do, their blinders are on, and that's all they need to take care of. Now, if you notice the attitude of the superintendent in the story, he's far more concerned with the schedule. He's just like, come on, we gotta go, we gotta get this guy, we gotta kill this guy, and then we gotta get going, okay? So in this sense, you see that human life is superseded by this bureaucratic attitude of schedules and timetables and all of this, right? Instead of the human or moral considerations of, my goodness, you're taking a human life. He wants everything to run on time, right? And then, the actual act of killing a person, right, is less important than that the schedule is attended to. So the prisoner, a Hindu, is described as thin with a large mustache. He's simply part of a schedule. So his humanity is being removed moment by moment. Okay. Now that's very, very important to understand for how this story and how Shooting an Elephant works, because it's about language being used to dehumanize people. Okay. So we've replaced human being with prisoner, with this other terminology. Okay. Now the main character. This is basically Orwell, the main character, the I. Says that as they're going to the gallows, a dreadful thing happened. Quote: a dreadful thing happened. You would think that it's something awful. Well, all that happens is this dog runs up and kind of interrupts things. Right. The dog starts barking and interrupts the moving from point A to point B. Not exactly dreadful. Sounds like irony to me. Now, what's interesting about this moment is that before this, and this is what I mean by really close reading, you have to read very carefully. You have to be very aware of language choice that authors make. Before this, the author or the speaker had been talking about we. We did this, we did that, right? Not I. So the dog comes in, and it's almost like the dog, by interrupting the bureaucratic procedure, right, that machine grinding on, it's almost like the speaker has an awakening, okay? Because it's only after that we see I. And I think it's a really conscious but very interesting choice that Orwell makes for the story. And then, so there'd been no I. It's like so he puts his handkerchief. He says, "I put my handkerchief on the dog to try to tie it up." Okay, so that my is the first kind of insertion of selfhood. You can think of it as selfhood instead of we, what we do collectively, right? It's the I, and so this I versus we is very important to pay attention to in this story. Like I said, the speaker realizes suddenly where he is. Now, it's in this moment where it's right here on page 25 of the PDF that you have. It was about 40 yards to the gallows. Now, the speaker keeps talking about distance. We're 40 yards from the gallows. We're 20. The ending of the story, the hanged man was 100 yards away. It was about 40 yards to the gallows. I watched the bare brown back of the prisoner marching in front of me. He walked clumsily with his bound arms, but quite steadily, with that bobbing gait of the Indian who never straightens his knees. At each step, his muscles slid neatly into place. The lock of hair on his scalp danced up and down. His feet printed themselves on the wet gravel. And once, in spite of the men who gripped him by each shoulder, he stepped slightly aside to avoid a puddle on the path. It is curious, but till that moment I had never realized what it means to destroy a healthy, conscious man. When I saw the prisoner step aside to avoid the puddle, I saw the mystery, the unspeakable wrongness of cutting a life short when it is in full tide. This man was not dying. He was alive just as we were alive. All the organs of his body were working, bowels digesting food, skin renewing itself, nails growing, tissues forming, all toiling away in solemn foolery. His nails would still be growing when he stood on the drop, when he was falling through the air with a tenth of a second to live. His eyes saw the yellow gravel and the gray walls, and his brain still remembered, foresaw, reasoned even about puddles. He and we, notice that differentiation, he and we were a party of men walking together, seeing, hearing, feeling, understanding the same world, and in 2 minutes, with a sudden snap, one of us would be gone. One mind less, one world less. I think it's a really powerful paragraph. But you see how he's describing the prisoner biologically, because while we might look different superficially, right, as people, biologically, I mean, we are genetically almost completely identical. There are only tiny little variations genetically that account for all the variation we see. So this is why that description that the speaker uses has to be biological, because that is fundamental, right? We might differ. We might speak a different language. We might have a different religion. We might be from different places, But at the same time, right, what unites us, what connects us, is a shared humanity, right? If we see each other as at least biologically human, then all the rest of it kind of falls in place, right? And so that's where that's partially because of the dog, right? Coming in and barking, right? It wakes this character up, and that's when that character has this epiphany. And then it goes back to the gallows. Okay. Now the prisoner is described right thereafter as clumsy again. Okay. Now why is the speaker so conscious of distance? Right? Is it distance away from this symbolic act of killing? Is it that bureaucratic attitude of, 20 yards away, 30 yards away, 10 yards away? Is that it? We can read it both ways. A kind of inherent fear on the speaker's part, but also just that bureaucratic attitude of only 5 more yards to go, only 2 more yards. Now the prisoner there, just to kind of clarify this, when he's saying Ram, 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 he's referencing Rama, which is a Hindu god who's considered to be both part divine, part human. Okay, so that he's praying. He's praying to Rama. Now, blah blah blah. Everyone had changed color, right? Everybody. Now, when they say this, right? It's not like they've all physically changed skin color. What he's describing there is that everybody knows that this is wrong or uncomfortable. Okay. The Indians had gone gray like bad coffee. We looked at the lashed hooded man on the drop and listened to his cries. Each cry, another second of life. The same thought was in all of our minds. Oh, kill him quickly, get it over, stop that abominable noise. Now, that's different, right? So they want it over. They want just like, shut up, shut up. Why? Well, it's not out of embarrassment. It's out of a deep and abiding discomfort. Human beings do not normally enjoy killing each other. I know that war and all of that happens, but on a normal day, if you're just passing somebody on the street, even somebody who looks different or is different or whatever, you're not thinking, oh, I should kill this person because they're different. I mean, it's just like, yeah, it's another person. Who cares? So what he says here and what the image is indicating are different. Okay. Now they kill him, and then we have this. They inspect the body. The superintendent reached out with his stick and poked the bare brown body. It oscillated slightly as he's just twisting there. He's all right, said the superintendent. A little bit ironic, right? Ha ha ha. Trying to make a joke. Joking about death. And notice what he does here. He glances at his wristwatch. 8 minutes past 8. Well, that's all for this morning, thank God. Now, time. So we did a great job. We saved 2 minutes on this execution. Okay, good for you. And what happens to the mood among the people now, among the officers? They're relieved. This is over. Like, oh my gosh, So the mood lightens dramatically. And you can tell that, like I said, with a close reading, it's quite obvious that everybody is really nervous about this, that it made everybody very, very uncomfortable because they know inherently that it's wrong to kill. And if we look at the last part of this, the Eurasian boy walking beside me nodded toward the way we had come with a knowing smile. Do you know, sir, our friend, he meant the dead man, when he heard his appeal had been dismissed, he pissed on the floor of his cell from fright. Kindly take one of my cigarettes, sir. Do you not admire my new silver case, sir? From the Boxwala, 2 rupees, 8 annas, classy European style. Several people laughed. At what? Nobody seemed certain. So the man who had just been killed, his appeal had been dismissed, and so he, out of just sheer fright, urinates on the floor. He pisses himself. And they laugh at this. So somebody who is terrified of dying, right? They laugh at that. Francis was walking by the superintendent, talking garrulously. Well, sir, all has passed off with the utmost satisfactoriness. It was all finished, flick, just like that. It is not always so. Oh no. I have known cases where the doctor was obliged to go beneath the gallows and pull the prisoner's legs to ensure decease. Most disagreeable. Really about, that's bad, said the superintendent. Ah, sir, it is worse when they become refractory. One man, that's an ironic word because while it's used correctly there, somebody who doesn't want to die through an execution, and they're resisting that. I don't know if you'd call that refractory. One man, I recall, clung to the bars of his cage when we were to take him out. You will scarcely credit, sir, that it took 6 warders to dislodge him, 3 pulling at each leg. So they're trying to drag this guy out to execute him, and he's holding onto the bars. He won't let him take him out. So there's 6 guys trying to pull his legs out. We reasoned with him. My dear fellow, he said, think of all the pain and trouble you are causing to us. Beautifully ironic line. Why? He doesn't want to die. And they're just doing their job, right? But they're thinking of it like, oh man, that you're making my job hard. What about the pain they're about to cause him the ultimate. But no, he would not listen. He was very troublesome. I found that I was laughing quite loudly. Everyone was laughing. Even the superintendent grinned in a tolerant way. You'd better all come out and have a drink, he said quite genially. I've got a bottle of whiskey in the car. We could do with it. We went through the big double gates of the prison into the road. Pulling at his legs, exclaimed a Burmese magistrate suddenly, and burst into a loud chuckling. We all began laughing again. At that moment, Francis's anecdote seemed extraordinarily funny. We all had a drink together, native and European alike, quite amicably. The dead man was 100 yards away. So you see, the only thing that unites them is, right, this killing. So that they're united in their guilt. They're united in not being. They're united in living, right? Having taken that life. And so the dead man was, once again, he reverts back to that bureaucratic stance. This idea, this thing is very far away. The further away it is, or farther away, I don't have to think about it. Okay. So if you read the story, you're going to notice that there's one piece of information that's missing. A very important piece. It's not the man's name, which is also missing. It's what? His crime. We don't know why they're executing this person. And I mean, so if we think about it, Orwell removes that piece of information, and I think it's a good maneuver, because what it does is it forces us to think about the act of executing anybody. Because if he said like, oh, he was a murderer, okay, well then we could justify, perhaps. I mean, you might not agree with it, but you could at least justify it. If he had simply stolen food from somebody to feed his family, well, you're going to kill him for that. The proportionality, right, doesn't work. So had he done something awful, you could at least say, well, I can sort of see why. But if it was a innocent act, right, or something trivial, you probably couldn't justify it. And so I think that by removing the crime, Orwell makes this philosophical. Is it ever okay? Right? Just like that, just like the speaker's realization about puddles, right? That one of us would be gone, one mind less, one world less. I mean, that's nothing to laugh at. I mean, my goodness. And then all of a sudden the bureaucracy kicks back in, right? Got a job to do, and that epiphany is left behind, right? Now the speaker of this story might not know his crime. It's entirely possible within a bureaucratic system that he's just doing his job, right? But you have to think of that excuse, because a lot of, for example, just to segue a little bit, after World War II, and when they were holding trials for the Nazis who had perpetrated the concentration camps and the murder of all of those people, a lot of the guards, like the lower ranking soldiers, they would say, like, literally, I was just following orders. I was just doing my job. If I didn't do it, they would kill me. Well, the idea is that at what point in a moral system can you still continue saying, I'm just doing my job, it doesn't affect me, what can I do, before you yourself can be held liable for that thing? I mean, obviously the generals and commanders and leaders would have to be held accountable. But at what point, right, in terms of like watching this go on and on and on, are you more and more liable for the potential crimes being committed? So like I said, Orwell had seen enough after 3 or 4 years of this and left. And this would have been a very comfortable, he would have moved up in the ranks. It would have been a very comfortable job. His father basically had the same job. And his father was actually disappointed in Orwell for wanting to quit and become a writer. He thought that, oh, well, you're throwing your life away. And unfortunately, Orwell becomes one of the more, if not one of the most important authors of the 20th century. So another thing about this story, right? We are also implicated in this killing. The reader is also implicated in the killing because we also don't know the man's crime, right? So in this sense of dramatic irony, we are the same as the main character. We can't tell what the man did. We can't even guess at it. Okay. Now, like I said, it's a philosophical point that the man's crime has been erased. That is an omission, in that sense, is a kind of euphemism. Think back to politics in the English language. That omission is a kind of euphemism. Okay. We aren't allowed to ask, should the man be killed? We have to ask, is it ever okay to kill anybody or execute anybody? So we can see that this isn't the first time that they've executed people. This is just the machinery of this place going forward. Duty, justice has been compartmentalized, has been bureaucratized, right? Has been kind of closed in, and nobody, because everybody shares this one little part. I just did this. You just did this. I walked him from here to here. You walked him up the steps. This guy pulled this lever. Nobody is directly responsible for killing this person, even though everybody is. Everybody's implicated, but nobody's like directly responsible for it. It's sort of like a firing squad. So people who get shot, they're executed through firing squad. They'll take like 6 or 7 people, and they'll only put the bullet in one of them, in one of the rifles. Everybody else has a blank. So nobody knows who actually shot, right, the killing bullet. They actually determined that it was psychologically damaging to people if they knew, my bullet was the one that killed him. Even though that person might be awful, right? It's still psychologically can hurt people. So some of the euphemisms in the story is, like I said, the omission, the laughter. They're ignoring their actual feelings. The descriptions of the man's external body versus the internal, the external stuff, which is the superficial stuff, versus the biological stuff that we all share. So language, once again, is being used to control how we see this person, how we see the world, how we see justice, how we see guilt or innocence in the story. Okay, so like I said, here's some ironies. These aren't the euphemisms. The euphemisms, I forgot to type those out. Like I said, the euphemisms would be the omission, the laughter, the external versus internal descriptions of the prisoner, his body. So here's some ironies for the story. They have to kill the prisoner before feeding the other prisoners. That is death leading to life. So he becomes part of this schedule, like, oh, how are we going to get to feeding, right, representative of living, before we have to kill this, sorry, I just got a text, this person. So the prisoner is Hindu. Hindus believe in reincarnation. Why is he afraid to die? Well, because life is better than death. Okay. The dog is dreadful. Not the execution. The killing of this guy is never described as dreadful. It's getting close in that one paragraph where the main character wakes up, but it's never like, oh my God, like we just killed a person, right? All of that is suppressed. All of that is pushed down into pits of the mind. Death is made into a scheduled event, right? No different than feeding prisoners, no different than, raising the flag or lowering it. Okay, the prisoner is described at one point as a cartoon, that is to say, not human. The crime, like I said, is not disclosed. Then there's the laughter after the execution. So all of these elements together, right, help to create this very ironic picture that Orwell is presenting to us. So that's a quick rundown of the story. I think that one paragraph is really beautiful, and you can just see how Orwell is handling these ironies and the way that bureaucracy functions in the story. So I hope that helps, and thank you.